After the fall of the Western Roman Empire, the political map of the Aegean Peninsula changed significantly. What was once part of a unified empire transformed into numerous Italian states. Thus emerged the Papal States, the republics of Genoa, Venice, and Florence, the kingdoms of Sardinia, Naples, and Sicily, the Duchy of Milan, and many other monarchies, city-states, and republics. These states were established, developed, and eventually disappeared under the pressure of powerful neighboring countries. Throughout history, many foreign powers conquered Italian lands. The barbarian kingdoms of the Dark Ages, the Byzantines, Arabs, and Normans, the emperors of the Holy Roman Empire, the Spanish kings, the Habsburg monarchy, and Napoleonic France. All these powers at various times held parts of the Aegean Peninsula. For centuries, Rome held the status of the primary religious center of Western Christianity and later Catholicism. Italians were at the forefront of the Renaissance cultural movement and modern banking, and the Italian lands were the birthplace of numerous renowned figures: Marco Polo and Dante Alighieri, Christopher Columbus, and Leonardo da Vinci, Niccolò Machiavelli, and Michelangelo Buonarroti, Galileo Galilei, and Antonio Vivaldi. Still, Italy's religious, cultural, and economic significance did not contribute to the creation of a unified state. This country was never united and remained for centuries a target of foreign intervention. And while history may have moved from swords and thrones to code and servers, the idea of control hasn't gone anywhere. And with just one click, it allows us to connect from another region. And now, back to the video, and to the era of Italy's unification. After the Napoleonic Wars, European diplomats at the Congress of Vienna partially restored the political map of the Aegean Peninsula to its state before the rapid rise of France and Napoleon Bonaparte. The key difference was that the Congress of Vienna confirmed the definitive end of 2 centuries-old Italian republics. The Kingdom of Sardinia was allowed to annex the Republic of Genoa, while Venice, along with the Duchy of Milan, was incorporated into the Austrian Empire. At that time, besides the territories of the Austrian Habsburgs in the north of the Aegean Peninsula, several independent states continued to exist on Italian lands, with some standing out in particular. The theocratic Papal States centered in Rome and governed by the head of the Roman Catholic Church, the Pope. The Kingdom of the Two Sicilies, established by the Spanish Bourbons in 1816 through the unification of the kingdoms of Naples and Sicily, and the aforementioned Kingdom of Sardinia, with its capital in Turin, ruled by the German-Italian House of Savoy. 45 years later, members of this house would become the kings of Italy. Before the process of Italy's political unification began, several significant events occurred that directly influenced the Risorgimento broke out against the outcomes and consequences of the Congress of Vienna. At that time, the Austrian Habsburgs had already become widely regarded as the main adversary of those fighting for Italian unification. This dynasty controlled the northeastern part of the Aegean Peninsula and firmly opposed any Italian nationalist movements. The Austrian authorities suppressed the uprising in the Kingdom of the Two Sicilies in 1820, and the following year in the Kingdom of Sardinia. By 1831, the Habsburgs had crushed yet another revolt, this time in the Duchy of Parma and Piacenza. That same year, journalist and politician Giuseppe Mazzini, along with other Italian immigrants, founded Young Italy in Marseille, France. This organization, whose ultimate goal was a free, independent, and unified Italian republic, immediately began its struggle for the unification of Italy and the liberation of the country from foreign domination. In 1833, Giuseppe Mazzini organized an uprising in Piedmont, and a year later, a military invasion of Savoy under the leadership of General Girolamo Ramorino. Both efforts ended in failure. Young Italy temporarily ceased its activities. Some members were executed or sentenced to death in absentia, and the organization was dismantled. Mazzini was expelled from France and settled in Switzerland, where in 1834 he founded Young Europe, an international political association that included Young Italy, Young Germany, and Young Poland as its members. 2 years later, Swiss authorities, dissatisfied with the activities of revolutionaries on their soil, dissolved the organization. Following this, Mazzini relocated to London. Young Italy resumed its activities in the 1840s, but the uprisings and conspiracies organized by the group still lacked popular support. During the revolutions, known as the Springtime of Nations, Young Italy ceased to exist. Its activities served as a transitional phase between the uprisings of the 1820s and 1830s and the Risorgimento, while also influencing other nations and the creation of similar organizations in their own countries. These included the aforementioned Young Germany and Young Poland, the Young Turks, who would later seize power in the Ottoman Empire and organize the Armenian Genocide, and even the much later Young Bosnia, whose member Gavrilo Princip carried out the infamous Sarajevo assassination. All of these groups, in one way or another, drew inspiration from Giuseppe Mazzini's Young Italy. The revolution in Italy, which was part of the revolutions of 1848, the Springtime of Nations, is considered the beginning of Italy's unification. This revolution aimed to abolish outdated feudalism, overcome long-standing feudal fragmentation, liberate the country from Austrian rule, and implement reforms in many areas. Nevertheless, only one of the goals of the Italian revolutionaries was the most important: the creation of a unified and independent Italian state. It all began with a popular uprising in Sicily, which initially achieved success. The rebels managed to seize power and establish a provisional government. This sparked a series of revolutions in several other Italian states: Venice, which was liberated from Austrian rule, as well as Parma and Modena, where the pro-Austrian rulers were overthrown almost simultaneously. The most dramatic uprising was the so-called 5 Days of Milan. As a result of street battles from March 18th to the 22nd, the city's inhabitants managed to force the Austrian forces under Marshal Joseph Radetzky to leave Milan. After this, the First Italian War of Independence began. It was an attempt by the Kingdom of Sardinia and the Italian Volunteer Army, with the support of several Italian states, to resist the rule of the Austrian Habsburgs on the Apennine Peninsula. At the beginning of the following year, the Roman Republic was declared. Pope Pius IX had already fled to Gaeta, and power in the Papal States temporarily passed to a triumvirate consisting of Giuseppe Mazzini, Carlo Armellini, and Aurelio Saffi. Soon, the First Italian War of Independence reached its climax. The ruler of the Kingdom of Sardinia, Charles Albert, faced off in a decisive battle with Austrian Marshal Joseph Radetzky. This was the Battle of Novara, which ended in a victory for the Habsburg monarchy. Charles Albert abdicated the throne and immigrated to Portugal, where he died in the same year. His son, Victor Emmanuel II, became the King of Sardinia and immediately signed an armistice with the Austrians. The Roman Republic lasted only a short time. Pope Pius IX had a powerful patron, Louis-Napoleon Bonaparte, president of the Second French Republic and nephew of the famous Napoleon I. At the request of Pius IX, the first French president organized a military intervention in the Roman Republic to restore the Papal States. The French expedition to Rome was led by General Charles Oudinot. He laid siege to the city, and despite fierce resistance from the military minister of the Roman Republic, Giuseppe Garibaldi, captured Rome and restored the secular power of the head of the Catholic Church. Giuseppe Mazzini and other leaders of the Republic immigrated to London. In the summer, a peace treaty was signed between the Kingdom of Sardinia and the Austrian Empire. Under its terms, the Italian state was required to pay a huge indemnity to the Habsburgs. At the same time, Venice, the last stronghold of the revolutionaries, fell. The situation returned to what it had been before the war. The revolution was defeated and did not lead to territorial changes. Almost all the achievements of the Italian revolutionaries were reversed. The only exception was the Albertine Statute of the Kingdom of Sardinia. This document would later become the Constitution of the Unified Kingdom of Italy. During the revolution, a key figure was the military leader Giuseppe Garibaldi, a former member of Young Italy who had already become popular among Italians. After the Springtime of Nations, this prominent figure temporarily relocated to North America, only to return in a few years and become a national hero of Italy. In 1857, Carlo Pisacane, one of the first Italian socialists, attempted to incite an uprising in the Kingdom of the Two Sicilies. He gathered a small force and sailed from Genoa to the island of Ponza in the Tyrrhenian Sea. At the time, there was a prison on this small island. Pisacane and his men overcame the guards and freed several hundred prisoners. They then landed on the Apennine Peninsula, hoping to start an uprising against the Neapolitan Bourbons, but they failed to gain support from the local population. Pisacane himself was killed by locals during an attempt to reach the Salento mountain range. 10 years after the Springtime of Nations, the Savoy dynasty in the Kingdom of Sardinia, with its capital in Turin, which had lost the Austro-Italian War, became the center of Italy's unification. It was from the historical region of Piedmont that the liberation of the country from Austrian Habsburg rule began. King Victor Emmanuel II of Sardinia did not repeat the mistakes of his late father. He immediately secured the support of a powerful ally, the Second French Empire, in which a few years earlier, President Louis-Napoleon Bonaparte had staged a coup and become Emperor Napoleon III. In 1858, the secret Plombières Agreement was reached. These were verbal arrangements for war against the Austrian Empire, made in the French town of Plombières-les-Bains, between the Prime Minister of Sardinia, Camillo Benso, Count of Cavour, and Napoleon III. The Second Italian War of Independence resulted in the defeat of the Habsburgs with the help of the French. The Savoy dynasty was able to seize the Austrian Lombardy, with Milan as its center. As a result of the weakened influence of the Habsburgs on the Italian peninsula, Sardinia was also able to annex several central Italian states: the Grand Duchy of Tuscany, the Duchy of Parma and Piacenza, and the Duchy of Modena and Reggio. Initially, all of these states freed themselves from Austrian influence and came under the protection of the Savoy dynasty. Later, they became the United Provinces of Central Italy, and in 1860 they joined the Kingdom of Sardinia. In exchange for its support in this war, the French Empire under Napoleon III gained control of Savoy and Nice. Soon after the final agreements resulting from the Austro-Italian-French War, the so-called Expedition of the Thousand, led by Giuseppe Garibaldi, took place in the mid-1850s. This prominent figure returned to Italy during the Second War of Independence. He commanded a corps of Alpine hunters, which assisted the Sardinian army in fighting the Austrians in northern Italy. The Expedition of the Thousand, initiated by the influential Italian politician Francesco Crispi, began with the landing of 189 Italian volunteers on the island of Sicily, under the leadership of Giuseppe Garibaldi. The goal of this military campaign was the conquest of the Kingdom of the Two Sicilies, which was still under Bourbon rule. Over time, the size of the army increased dramatically. Garibaldi's Southern Army, which was formed during the conquest of the northern part of the Italian peninsula, eventually numbered around 50,000 Italian and foreign volunteers. Parallel to the Expedition of the Thousand, Manfredo Fanti's expedition took place against the Papal States, resulting in the Sardinian army capturing part of the Papal territory. Less than a year after the war began, the Southern Army achieved final victory. The Bourbons lost their influence on the Italian peninsula, and Naples and Sicily were incorporated into the Kingdom of Sardinia. As a result, nearly all of Italy, except for Austrian Venice and the theocratic Papal States, came under the control of the Savoy dynasty. The Expedition of the Thousand became the final territorial conquest before the proclamation of the Kingdom of Italy, and was the only military campaign supported by all four universally recognized leaders of the Risorgimento, the so-called Fathers of the Fatherland: Giuseppe Mazzini, leader of Young Italy; King Victor Emmanuel II of Sardinia; General Giuseppe Garibaldi; and the Prime Minister of Sardinia, Camillo Benso, Count of Cavour. On March 17, 1861, the Parliament of the Kingdom of Sardinia proclaimed the Kingdom of Italy under Victor Emmanuel II. Today, the anniversary of Italy's unification is celebrated as a national holiday. Turin was chosen as the provisional capital of the newly unified Italy, as it was the historical center of the Piedmont region. All the same, Rome was officially declared as the capital, even though it remained under the control of the Papal States at the time. This set the stage for what became known as the Roman Question, a nearly 70-year-long conflict between the Italian government and the Pope regarding the temporal power of the papacy. In the following year, Giuseppe Garibaldi, who held anti-Catholic views and strongly opposed the secular power of the Pope, made a doomed attempt to capture Rome. Emperor Napoleon III of France had stationed a military garrison in the city to ensure its independence from Italy. Pope Pius IX excommunicated Garibaldi, and King Victor Emmanuel II of Italy refused to authorize or support his military leader in seizing the religious center of Catholicism. Despite all this, Garibaldi managed to rally 2,000 volunteers and, under the banner of Rome or death, marched toward Rome. Along the way, his forces were intercepted by the Royal Italian Army, led by Emilio Pallavicini, who defeated Garibaldi's army in the one-day, almost bloodless Battle of Aspromonte. The battle ended quickly because Garibaldi had ordered his men not to shoot at fellow Italians. Garibaldi himself was wounded and, after a major operation during his honorary imprisonment, was released by order of the Italian government after recovering. In 1865, due to its cultural, economic, and political influence, as well as its geographical location in the center of the Italian peninsula, Florence became the temporary capital of the Kingdom of Italy. Parallel to the process of the unification of Italy, a prolonged confrontation between the Prussian Hohenzollerns and the Austrian Habsburgs for the right to unify Germany continued in Central Europe. You can learn more about this in our episode on the unification of Germany. The Austro-Prussian War directly influenced the beginning of the Third War of Italian independence. Under prior secret agreements between Prussia and Italy, this war began almost immediately after the German one and forced the Austrian Empire to fight on two fronts. The Savoy dynasty had little success in the confrontation with the Habsburgs. Despite having numerical superiority, the Italians lost the Battle of Custoza. Even so, their Prussian allies defeated the Austrians in the famous Battle of Sadowa, which led to the defeat of the Habsburgs in both wars. As a result, Italy gained the region of Venetia with the city of Venice. In 1867, Giuseppe Garibaldi made another unsuccessful attempt to capture Rome. He once again expressed his anti-Catholic and anti-papal views, gathered about 7,000 volunteers, and marched towards the Eternal City. To the northeast of Rome, near the town of Mentana, Garibaldi's Italian army was met by the combined Franco-Papal forces, commanded by the German General Hermann Kanzler. In the Battle of Mentana, the poorly armed volunteers were defeated, and their commander was wounded in the leg. For a time, Giuseppe Garibaldi was imprisoned by the Italian government, but his influence, popular love, and contributions to the homeland paved the way for his release from custody. The last significant event of the Risorgimento was also linked to the expansion of Prussia. During the Franco-Prussian War, the result of which was the formation of the German Empire, French troops were forced to leave Rome, leaving the secular power of the Pope defenseless. Victor Emmanuel II sent the vice-governor of Naples, Count Gustavo Ponza di San Martino, to Rome with an offer of safe passage for the Italian army into the city, with the personal permission of the Pope. Thus, the King of Italy proposed to Pius IX the opportunity to save face, but the head of the Catholic Church rejected the offer. "I am neither a prophet nor the son of a prophet, but I tell you that you will never enter Rome." In the spring of 1870, Italian forces under the command of Raffaele Cadorna, the father of Luigi Cadorna, who would later become the chief of staff of the Royal Army during World War I, marched on Rome. After a brief siege, the forces of the Kingdom of Italy did what Giuseppe Garibaldi had long dreamed of. They captured the Eternal City for the Italian crown. The renowned military leader himself was, at the time, actively involved in the Franco-Prussian War, fighting on the side of the French. Pope Pius IX renounced all territories outside the Vatican, marking the definitive end of the Papal States. Still, the Roman question remained unresolved. The head of the Catholic Church declared himself a prisoner of the Vatican and refused to recognize the authority of the Italian crown. The Roman question lingered until 1929, when, under the direct involvement of Italy's Prime Minister and fascist leader Benito Mussolini, the Lateran Treaty was signed, establishing the Vatican City-State, the smallest independent country in the world. Already in 1871, the capital of Italy was officially moved from Florence to Rome. Finally, everything that had been proclaimed during the creation of the Kingdom of Italy became a historical reality. The Risorgimento came to an end with the Kingdom of Sardinia and the House of Savoy uniting a fragmented Italy under one flag after centuries of division. But some territories of the modern Italian Republic were annexed to the Kingdom of Italy much later, when this state, as a member of the Entente military alliance, took part in the victory over Austria-Hungary in World War I. The Habsburg monarchy ceased to exist, transforming into several independent states, and Italy seized small territories in the northeast of the Ennine Peninsula. For this reason, some historians consider the unification of Italy to be a significantly more extended process, culminating in the Treaty of Rapallo with the Kingdom of Serbs, Croats, and Slovenes, one of the countries that emerged from the dissolved Austria-Hungary. Incidentally, this perspective on the chronological framework of Italy, unification, is represented in the Central Museum of the Risorgimento in Rome.